Am I on camera? Oh boy.
There are about 20 out here on. Yeah, we see you, Tim.
Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and start up and welcome to yet another meeting of the Los Angeles Astronomical Society, which is doing this since 1926. So, 2026 it'll be our 100th year, so get ready for it right now. Start getting ready. Before I do anything else, I customarily ask if there are any new members here in the audience. There is a new member. Ah.
Oh, okay. Hi there. I'm Jeff Sturgill, new member. Really looking forward to this. Oh, well, I've been a lifetime photographer, and just in the last couple of years have gotten into visual astronomy, just with the basic stuff, and it's fun. I'll be retiring soon and have a little more time to put into it, probably less money, but yeah, it's good. I really enjoy it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else is new tonight? Okay, back to you, Jim.
Are there any new members hanging out in Zoom land? No, huh? Okay. We do have a few orders of business to take care of before the general meeting. You will notice, of course, that I am not Daryl, and I am not Alicia, and neither one of them could be with us tonight. And as a matter of fact, I believe that right now Alicia is sound asleep because she's been working like 3 days in a row without a break or something like that. And so I have a list of announcements to make that came from the last board meeting, which I did not attend because I was busy traveling to Lowell Observatory. Trust me, it's a lot more fun to go there than to go to a board meeting. Nothing wrong with the board meeting. It's just that, it's just the way it is. And so our a master plan was approved for the Lockwood Valley site, and now we're going to go looking for timelines, budgets, looking for money, all that good stuff. And if you know, Ford Observatory was destroyed in the bridge fire, and we are obliged to clean up the site, and the board approved up to $18,000 to do that, and we're still working with the Forest Service to figure out how, if we want to put anything there. There was an update to the bylaws, which was sent out and approved by the board at the last meeting, and I just got back earlier today from my trip and didn't get a chance to look up what it is they changed in the bylaws. But while you were looking, we changed. Yeah, actually, you were looking. We changed the bylaws. And we finished with school outreach for the year. The Mount Wilson half nights are over. Remember to come to Garvey on Wednesday night. And remember that Keith Armstrong has his outreaches every Thursday night at Silver Lake, and evidently once a month it turns into a wild party in the streets and the bar is open. And so talk to Keith, and I'm sure you can have a lot of fun there. Is Keith on the Zoom anywhere? I don't see him. There was an astrophoto contest. Remember that next month's December meeting is the show and tell meeting for members, and some of our astrophotography contest winners are going to be showing off their pictures. And if you've got something you want to show off, get in touch with Secretary Spencer and let him know. And we do have the banquet coming up on January 19th. We've not done a really good job of advertising it yet, but we'll get a form up on the webpage for you to pay for it. I was not at the last board meeting. If they set a price, it can't be very different from last year's price because the cost at the source, the Quiet Cannon, only went up by $1 per person. And so we're doing okay. And I did confirm that our banquet speaker on January 19th will be Andy Bowden, who is the Deputy Director for Optical Astronomy at Caltech. And while he's not busy doing really fancy astronomy and talking about interferometry and goes, even over my head, he's a furniture maker. And he's going to give a really good talk that I've already heard on Russell Porter's drawings from Palomar and Griffith and his artwork. And so that's going to be really good for everybody. You don't want to miss that. You want to come to the banquet. It's lots of fun. So there are no excuses. I'm going to look down the roster. There's 1,000 members of the society. I'm going to check all of them. And if you don't come to the banquet, right, okay, well, we can't handle 1,000 people, so that might not work. But you get the idea. And announcements will be sent out when the LAS store has new stuff. Remember, the elections are about to start. It's election time for us. The other election is over. But our election is coming up. If you want to nominate yourself, hurry up and do it. The timeline, the limit is the November 24th. So hurry up and nominate yourself or nominate somebody you either like or don't like, depending on how you look at that kind of thing.
Tim,
And they have to decide, do they want to run or not.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
The nominations closed on the 16th.
Oh, the nomination's closed. So what is this note that I have?
That's when the people who were nominated have to accept the nomination and send in a short bio.
Oh, okay. So it's too late to nominate people. Sorry about that. Boy, nobody nominated me. I'm glad to hear that. And so you have to wait till the 24th to accept. And Greg Thompson, it's been kind of a bad year medically for the LAS. Greg Thompson is still in the hospital recovering, slightly improved, but he's still in kind of bad shape. And I don't think we're going to get much out of him for the rest of the year. But hopefully early next year, he'll be back in circulation. Now, does anybody think I missed something? Okay, our next Griffith Star Party is December 7th. And I don't remember when our next general meeting is, but we'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You'll find out. Now, I have I actually have a couple of awards to give out. And the first thing I want to do is talk about the guy sitting up here in front, Rob Komodo. I'm going to read a paragraph that comes from Alicia. Rob and his family have been longtime members of the LAS since the 1980s. They've dedicated their time to outreach and service to the club, attended all manner of public outreach events, provided knowledge to fellow LAS members, to the general public. They've attended meetings all over the place, go to Griffith, Garvey. In any case, Rob, Alan, and Julie are stalwart outreach heroes of the LAAS, and the board has nominated them for life membership in the LAAS, but it requires approval of the membership. So I'm asking everybody to raise their hands in favor of Rob becoming a life member of the LAAS. And if there's anybody who objects, shut up. No, don't take that seriously. But okay, Rob, you, Julie, and Alan are now life members of the LAAS. Congratulations. So we have another guest sitting down here, Gio, former President Gio. I'm going to read a paragraph about Gio here because he has also been nominated by the board for life membership in the LAAS. Gio is being nominated for lifetime membership because of his continuous and generous contributions to the Los Angeles Astronomical Society. Gio has served as president for the society, leading it for years through important decisions and outreach opportunities while networking with the LA community for exposure, charity, and gaining new members. He has also organized our Science Night. Alicia wrote on several occasions. He's organized it on every occasion. So if you go to the Halloween Science Night and you like it, don't thank me, thank Gio, because Gio is the guy, the mastermind who makes it all work. Gio regularly posts on social media. He's all over TikTok, Instagram. And if you may remember, you may not know the story, but around 2010, Gio walked into the Planetary Society and commandeered their public outreach and just kind of took over and ran it. And then a couple of years later, they figured out he wasn't part of the Planetary Society and had anything to do with it. They had to give him a membership to save face. You know? And so Gio has also been nominated for a life membership in the LAAS. And that also requires all of you to raise your hands in favor of Gio being a life member of the LAAS. Oh, boy. But I'm not done with Gio yet. I've only told a part of the story of his public outreach. He's a monster all over the place. He conspired with a few friends and some doctors from Children's Hospital to create an organization called Safe Place for Space, where children with developmental difficulties could come and have like a star party experience, a science fair experience. That effort has not paid off yet, but I'm hoping that it will, because of Gio's very widespread and very deep and consistent, constant, unbelievable worship of public outreach. Last January, the Consortium of Western Amateur Astronomers voted to award Gio the 2024 G. Bruce Blair Medal for his outstanding outreach. And of course, as soon as we voted to award him the medal, our medal-making companies all quit and went out of business. We didn't have anybody make the medal. We didn't have anybody to plate it. And that's why it's already November, and we're finally getting him the medal because we finally were able to find a company to actually do it. So, Gio, if you will come up here. There's your fancy medal. Be careful, don't drop it. So it is my pleasure as president of the Western Amateur Astronomers to award Gio his G. Bruce Blair Medal and the fancy lapel pin, like the one on my shirt, that you can wear to prove how fantastic you really are. Thank you, Mr. Gio. I should point out, hold it up to the camera. Yeah, it's upper left there. I should point out that Dr. Krupp, who runs Griffith Observatory, is also a recipient of that particular medal. And up here in the Zoomy land, Old Furry Face has also received a G. Bruce Blair Medal at some point back in the old days, which is probably when dinosaurs roamed the earth or some such thing. And Monsignor Royer, who was also once a president of the LAAS. It is a prestigious award given by a consortium of organizations, and we want to thank you for your very great outreach efforts. So, in the absence of objections, we're going to go from here to our guest speaker. We were actually students together for a little while, several years ago. Trina Ray is currently, let's see if I can find it on my little thingy here. She's working on the Europa Clipper mission as a scientist on, what is it? It's investigation scientist for the ice-penetrating radar instrument on NASA's Europa Clipper, which just launched a very short time ago, as you may recall. And so she's going to give us the lowdown on the Europa Clipper. So get up here and start talking.
Okay, turn green. Okay, just give me a second, people. Just give me a second. Okay, that's a good sign. And because sometimes I walk, let me put this on my waist. I can do it. I have skills. Okay, let's give that a try. Can everybody online hear me okay? Do you guys see thumbs up there? I can't see them. Okay. Let me open this up. And let me hit play. All right. Can you see the slides? And it's the right sense of it? We're golden. Well, so when Tim invited me to come give a talk, not 6 weeks after launch, I was like, ooh, let me tell you all about launch, hurricanes, tornadoes, launch delays, the craziness of launch. And I said, so when was the last time you got a Clipper talk? And he said, never. I'm like, okay, well then we will spend some time on launch because it was very exciting. But I decided to dust off some of my regular slides to tell you just a little bit about the mission. So the mission is pretty incredible. This is a picture of our spacecraft. I will slip in some launch things along the way. So in all the years that I've been giving this talk, I've always said this is a picture of our spacecraft, which was a lie. This was not a picture of our spacecraft until 1 week ago when we had our successful deployments of the mag boom shooting out the top and those long reason antennas sticking out. And so for the first time, I can stand in front of an audience and say, this is what my spacecraft actually looks like. And it's just a moment when that happens. We had the successful deployments literally last week. On the 8th and the 11th were the last two big deployments. So anyway, this is what the spacecraft looks like. Let me get my mouse. Can you guys see my mouse online? Thumbs up? Okay. So the spacecraft is pretty big. If you were to set it up in on a basketball court, it would go end to end on the basketball court. The solar arrays, pretty giant. We are out at Jupiter, and so it's no surprise that we need pretty big solar arrays to power all of our science and engineering pieces of equipment out at Jupiter. So very big spacecraft. We have a design on the spacecraft that says, okay, we're going to the Jupiter system. We're going to fly around Jupiter, but we're doing Europa. That's our science target. So we're all going to do Europa flybys, and we're all going to do it together. So everybody has to be on at the same time, and everybody has to be looking at Europa at the same time. So that's how all the instruments are attached to the spacecraft. So you can see here the cameras. Where's my mouse? The cameras are all looking down at Europa, so that's ultraviolet, infrared, thermal imager, all that kind of stuff. The instruments that are taking in particles, like the dust detector or the mass spectrometer, those are all like in the direction of flight, so kind of, in forward pointed instruments. And then you can see that the reason antennas are pointing down, and the magnetometer is just away, right? We just need to get the magnetometer away from the spacecraft, because if you have it too close to the spacecraft, all it does is measure the magnetic field of the spacecraft. And we built the spacecraft. We don't need to know the magnetic field of the spacecraft, so we need to put it on a boom that gets it far away. So this is kind of like ideal, right? Now, for those of you who maybe followed other missions like the Cassini mission or other flight, other spacecraft in orbit or at science targets, there's always usually like a lot of contention about who's going to control the pointing of the spacecraft, who gets that resource, who gets the data. And right now, the Europa Clipper, as it's designed, is everybody on all the time. We have the power for that, so there's a big battery inside here, solar arrays, charge up the battery. We go straight through the flyby on the battery. So everybody's on all the time, and everybody's pointed down at Europa, which for somebody who worked on Cassini, where we had to we had to discuss with intensity. We didn't argue, we discussed with intensity. The scientists really had to negotiate who was going to have control of the pointing. And it was a big conversation on Cassini all the time. And so this, by the way, is a gift to have everybody on all the time and pointed to the same thing. So let me just give you a quick tour of the instruments that we have on board the spacecraft. So we do have a whole set of cameras. We have ICE, which is a narrow and wide angle camera. I should have thought, Tim, I'm at a club that does imaging. I should have looked up the imaging specs and had them ready. I don't have those on the tip of my brain. But if I recall correctly, and if not, then I know people in the audience who will correct me, the narrow angle camera can see 1 meter, that at their highest resolution when they're the closest. So literally if you hold your arms out and if there was a red splotch in the middle of your arms, the narrow angle camera would be able to see that on the flybys, which is pretty incredible. We also have an infrared mapping spectrometer. That's the MISE camera that's got 100 plus wavelengths of light, and it takes images and a push broom and also framing. We have the eThemis, which is just basically a thermal imager. Think of that as the night vision goggles, really looking for hot spots. So when we're looking down at Europa, we want to, as we're going over the chaos train, if there's little bits of it that are warmer than the other bits, we want to know that. So think of that as your thermal hotspot searcher. And then Europa UVS is the ultraviolet imager and spectrometer. And what we're looking for there is the material in between, also the light that bounces off the surface. But that's also a very good plume hunter. If we want to go after plumes, the Europa UVS is a very good instrument to help us find plumes. Right now we think that it's possible that there's plumes on Europa. Hubble has looked several times. It doesn't find them every time it looks, so it's not like Enceladus. Like once we found the plumes on Enceladus, they were there all the time. But we do have some pretty good hints, right, that there would be plumes on Europa. Now remember, Europa is a lot bigger than Enceladus, so the plumes are going to be much smaller just because of the gravity. And again, we don't see them all the time. But we are very well instrumented if there are plumes. We have a really good mass spectrometer, a really good dust detector, and the Europa UVS. Now you'll notice that I left the Reason instrument till last. This is the instrument that is new to the outer solar system. We have never flown an ice-penetrating radar to the outer solar system. We have flown them on Mars missions, so Charade and Marsus, and of course we've flown them on planes over the Antarctic, that kind of stuff. But so this is the instrument that is going to look into the surface of Europa. And if the ice is cold and clear and few cracks in it, it'll go all the way down. We have 2 frequencies all the way down to the ocean. We have 2 frequencies, a very high frequency and then a little bit longer high frequency. And so if there's a lot of little jumble on the surface, if there's a lot of cracks, then that longer frequency one is the one that'll penetrate all the way down. And the high frequency one will give you the high resolution surface. So we're actually looking into the surface of Europa down to the ocean. And when you start thinking about how we can put all that together, when you have the thermal imager telling you where things are hot, when you have the camera telling you where the cracks are, when you have the spectrometer telling you, the MISE telling you, hey, by the way, that red stuff that's near there, that's not only salts, but it's even more interesting than salts. There's a lot of amino acids in that red stuff. You can see how together these things start to get very interesting to us in terms of what we can learn about Europa and what it might lead us to just even think and ponder about in terms of material on the surface getting worked its way down into the ocean and back up. We do have several instruments that are, we call them in situ instruments. Those are the ones on the bottom there. We've got sort of the dust detector out there just, listening for dust, waiting for the dust to hit it, where did the dust come from, how fast is it moving. We also have the Europa magnetometer. The magnetometer tells us about the magnetic field that it's experiencing. So mostly it's telling you about Jupiter's magnetic field. But when it gets close to Europa, it can tell you about Europa's magnetic field. But if there's little things around, little bits of plasma, that might be like having little electrical noise, that might confuse the magnetometer. So the PIMS instrument is these Faraday cups on the spacecraft, and its whole job is to tell you what is the plasma environment the spacecraft is embedded in so that it can tell the magnetometer, hey, don't get confused by that stuff. That stuff isn't Europa. That stuff is stuff that we are embedded in right now. So those 2 instruments they lock arms, and they really get at the interior of Europa. So the reason is telling you something as you go down. Once you know the thickness of the ice shell, then the magnetometer can tell you how much magnetic energy is there that could come from Europa, and it can tell you then the thickness of the ocean and the salinity, right? So it turns out that they all work together. We also have a gravity radio science team. This uses the communications link to the spacecraft, and it tells you things about sort of the interior of Europa in the global sense, right? What is the moment of inertia down to the nth degree inside of Europa, that sort of thing. So all of these work together to tell you something about the interior. Now, our plan is to launch in October of 2024, of course. You know what? I need to update that. Look at that. It says October. Isn't that cute? It says October 10th. That was our launch date. Our launch date now is October 14th. So our plan was to launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We successfully launched. We're going to orbit out to Mars in March of next year. Then we're going to come back to the Earth, and then we're going to go out again to Jupiter. So that is our interplanetary trajectory. It's going to take us about 5.5 years. Once we get to Jupiter, we're going to orbit Jupiter, many, many times, and then we're going to do flybys of Europa. So we'll do about 50 flybys of Europa. Now, we designed those flybys to go on the sub-Jovian side and on the anti-Jovian side, and to go high, to go low. So we try to design sort of a web of flybys around Europa that really tell you, hopefully, the story of this moon. And it's a good idea. When I was working on Cassini many, many years ago, I went I was asked to be on a review panel for the Europa. It wasn't called Europa Clipper at the time. It was called something else. And I remember them telling me, like, right in the beginning, here's our plan. We're going to have all the instruments on at the same time. We're going to fly by Europa 50 times using Jupiter is going to be our main. We're mostly orbiting Jupiter. We're going to fly by Europa. We're going to have like 2 weeks where we dump the data, and then we're going to fly by Europa again, 2 weeks to dump the data. And I was just like, yeah, no need to talk anymore. I completely understand your mission concept, and it's going to be great. It was very easy to understand, especially having worked on Cassini and spent many, many years on working on the Titan flybys, where basically that's what we did. We orbited Saturn, but then we did flybys of Titan. And I remember when I first came to work for the Clipper mission, I used to say to other people who were on the mission, well, if Cassini had only done Titan flybys, right, if you'd only done the Titan stuff, that's kind of your mission. And since I worked almost exclusively on the Titan flybys, I was like, believe me, I'm here for you. I know exactly what you guys are doing. Being a Star Trek fan, I sometimes use, I sometimes like to sprinkle in Doctor Who or Star Trek or Star Wars references. And since there's a web of orbits around Europa, that was my nod there. So I think I've already said this a little bit, but let me be more explicit. When we say what science are we trying to learn, we are really trying to learn, there's sort of 3 big key pieces of science we're trying to learn about Europa. I mean, this little moon has very likely an ocean underneath the surface. And that ocean has more water in it than all the oceans of the Earth combined. And so the interior of Europa is an interesting place to us. We have multiple instruments that are going to try to help us understand that. The Reason instrument, the magnetometer, HIMS, working with gravity radio science. So understanding the ice shell and then the interior is a big piece of our science. But also, Europa is one of the most unique moons in terms of its surface that you could ever imagine. It doesn't look like any other moon in the solar system. It doesn't have a lot of craters, so we know that the surface is young. It has these crazy cracks everywhere. It has cycloid cracks. It has cracks that were, like, you could tell right there, just looking at that picture of the composition, you can tell that split apart, and then there's red stuff, right? That red stuff, that's newer, right? You can see what's new and what's old, right? The red stuff is newer than this crack right here, right? Oh my gosh, the amount of information about this ice geology that is resident in understanding the details of the geology of Europa's surface is going to be a bonanza for ice geologists. It's just going to be a bonanza once you have high resolution images everywhere. Galileo, of course, that would have been one of its goals had the high gain antenna survived and we had the data rates that we had hoped. But that didn't happen. Of course, Juno has other targets that it's looking at. It's done several very nice flybys of Europa, but we're now sending a dedicated mission to study Europa. And for ice geology, it's going to be a bonanza. We also are looking at the activity, which I mentioned, perhaps we have plumes. Not sure, maybe there's recent deposits down on the surface of the little moon. We'll make sure that we capture all that to the best of our ability. And then we know, because we've been in this business a long time, we know that our mission is not the last mission. There's going to be another mission, and there's going to be a lander, and there's going to be something that goes through the surface, down a crack, or melts its way through to the ocean. So we know that we have to provide the data that is sufficient for reconnaissance for the next mission to go. So that is sort of our big ideas in terms of what are the science we're going after, right? Interior, composition, geology. Like, what is that red stuff? What's it made of? Where is it? What's going on? What's going on with the cracks? What's the interior? So we have a lot of questions about that, but it all wraps up into one bigger question. And that bigger question is Europa habitable? Now, we're not a life detection mission, so we won't come out in the New York Times and say we've detected life. Well, okay, if a little squid or something gets shot up in a plume and sticks on our lens of our camera, okay, I'll give it to you. We'll be on the New York Times saying there's life on Europa. But we are not a life detection. I mean, we're 25 miles high, so that's going to be pretty unusual. But what we are is a habitability mission. And in a habitability mission, what we're trying to see are the essential ingredients there, right? Do we have the essential elements? Do we have energy? We do, right? Europa, just like all the moons of the Galileo system, they have heating that comes from the tidal distortions. Also, there's just the leftover chemical heating from formation. Do we have water? You betcha. More water than all the oceans of the Earth combined. Do we have interesting chemistry? You betcha. That red stuff is interesting, right? There's a lot of salts in that. There's a lot of materials that are just the building blocks for life. And what's been happening? Europa's been sitting there and simmering for 4 billion years. This ocean has been simmering for 4 billion years. It is possible, right? It is possible that there is, that life exists today on Europa. Now, our mission is just a habitability. We're going to tell you, do the conditions exist for that? The next mission will send all the life detection stuff if there's a thumbs up. So that's a nice thing to think about, right? When you think about life in the universe, and if here in our own solar system, there was a second genesis of life, I think that tells us something about how life is much more common in the universe than we ever could have imagined. And that's the sort of thing that really kind of just speaks to the humanity in all of us. I mean, we all love astronomy, we all got into the field at some point, but these are some of the big ideas that we talk about in this field that really are very exciting. Now, I do want to spend a little bit talking about the road to launch because first of all, it just has happened to me. So like I am totally caught up in it in my head and I can't imagine not talking about it. But it was a crazy exciting story. Now I know I'm showing you a crazy emission graph, which by the way has been cleared through LRS. No worries. Through URS, it's been cleared for OPAG. So this is a graph from a year ago where it's telling us what is the plan, right? So we're going to have all the subsystems delivered. We're going to start putting the subsystems together. We're going to start, then once it's all together, we're going to start doing tests. We're going to do avionics tests and environmental tests and EMI, EMC tests and shake and bake tests, right? Sort of vibration tests. And when I first saw this graph years ago, I'm like, oh, 2 years of putting the spacecraft together. It seemed so long. It seemed like we would never get there. But believe me, once you get into it, like the last 2 years of my life, this graphic has like ruled our lives. Every month there's something else that's turning green. Every month there's something else that's happening. occasionally there's crazy things happening. Like we found out that there were some transistors on the spacecraft that were not behaving the way that they should behave. And it was gigantic, right? It was gigantic. They're everywhere. There's like 1,200 of them all over the spacecraft. And, you know, that happened here, right? It was, that's late in the game to discover something like that. But I just kind of wanted to show this to you because I feel like that's one of the things when you go and you give a talk about your mission, is you want to kind of communicate. You know, when we're out at Jupiter and we're out at Europa, we're going to be talking about the science and it's going to be awesome. But this is a moment to really celebrate the people who build these amazing machines and the plan that they have to put together to bring the spacecraft together, to integrate everything, and then to test everything. And by the way, it's a special type of person who thrives in that environment, because testing is all about finding problems. You test, you find a problem, you fix a problem, find a problem, fix a problem. Well, I can tell you, when you're sitting in the hallway, you know, you're walking to the bathroom, and somebody comes out of a meeting that they've just been in, and they're telling you a problem that they found. And you're like, that's a big problem. That would be like mission ending. And it's just like, okay, I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to wait a couple of days to see if anybody else's hair is on fire, right? And the thing is this happens constantly. They constantly find problems, and then they constantly fix problems. And so you just, like I said, it takes a special kind of person to be in phase D of a mission and to love it. And I will tell you, I am not that person. I hate phase D. I will never do phase D again. I do not want to be walking down the hallways and hear about a problem and then hear somebody 2 days later fix the problem. No. I'm done with that. You launch a spacecraft and you give it to me and I'll do amazing science. Phase E is for me. But I'll tell you, the people who are really good at this at JPL, they are really, really good at this. And they just have, they put together a plan. You can see all this margin. Look at all this lovely margin. Look at that, 1.5 months of margin, right? So here's the same graphic just a few months ago. And you see all that lovely margin gone, because it's been used appropriately. This is what margin is for, is to use it. But you know, that transistor problem came along, and that was just one of many. You know, there were really, someone will write a book, someone will write a paper, and it will be very interesting about all the different challenges that the Europa Clipper had. But here we are, and the margin, right down to the wire, and then we deliver to the Cape on time. Literally, the day we were supposed to deliver to SpaceX is the day we delivered to SpaceX. And so it was truly a privilege, actually, to be part of the team during this. It's like I said, not for everybody, and not for me in the future, but it is truly a privilege. I have just a couple of pictures. This is all the science instruments naked, not covered in the Kapton, so you get a chance. Some of them are covered, but not all of them. And there's the vault. You can see the vault up there. This is the lid of the vault, so this comes down, and here's the mass specs and SUDA. Those are the mass spectrometer and the dust detector. Then here's the narrow angle camera right here, the thing that can see a red dot the size of your arms. Let's see, Tim, how much time do I have? Am I good? I know that I'm good right now, but okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through like 5 slides. If we have time, I'm going to come back to them. Because I think there's like more interesting things to tell. But scientists don't usually get to go into the high bay, and I got to go into the high bay to do a filming. And so because it was very important to me, I had like 5 little slides about me. And then, so if we have time, I'm happy to go back to that. But if not, I'm going to go on. So here is the spacecraft in some of those tests. So what kind of tests do you think that we need to do? Some of them are very obvious. We need to have a launch test, right? There's a vibration test because we have to have a launch test. Obviously, we're sending the spacecraft all the way out to Jupiter where it gets brutally cold. Clearly, we need a thermal test. Obviously, it has to operate in the vacuum of space. Clearly, we need to do both a thermal and a vacuum test, right? But we also need to do an electromagnetic test. So I mentioned it briefly, right? the magnetometer is on a boom that gets extended because we don't want to measure the electromagnetic signature of the spacecraft. Now, Reason, the ice-penetrating radar, does not have that benefit. It is attached to the solar rays, and it is right there in the near field of the spacecraft. So there was a big document that got written. Everybody, you have to be really good at your magnetic cleanliness. You have to be really good at your electrical noise. It has to be very, very low. And the magnetometer and Reason, we were both in there going, you have to do this for us. Once we get out there to Europa, we don't want to be listening to signals from the spacecraft and thinking that it's signals from Europa. So at the end, we have to do a test. So you have to put a big box around that blanks out all the Earth's magnetic field. You have to put a big cage around that blanks out all the EMI, EMC. But I think all of you know, because I said it earlier, that the spacecraft, when it's fully deployed in Reason, it's the size of a basketball court, and this is not a basketball court. So in particular for ECM and Reason, we couldn't deploy the instrument and listen to the spacecraft. So we had to have little detectors all over the place that pretended to be the instrument while they did these tests. Excuse me. So this was literally years of people's lives. And when we deployed Reason just a week or two ago, so first of all, is there a successful deployment? Yay, everybody's happy. But the very first thing, the Reason scientists were like, what does the EMI look like? What does the EMI, EMC look like? And early indications are that it looks very, very good. And that all of this work was absolutely what needed to get done. And that it was done successfully. The magnetometer also, early indications are spacecraft is beautiful, right? We were lucky enough that we were able to watch Clipper being built at JPL. And hopefully some of you watched it online, because we just sent the images straight out the door. We had a camera looking at it all the time. And so I used to go down and visit it all the time. I used to tell all the youngsters on the mission, go visit it, because once it's in space, you'll never be able to do it. And you will treasure every picture that you have with the spacecraft in the background. I can't even tell you the number of pictures I have like me there with the spacecraft in the background. And then when it went to KSC, we had some pictures for a short period of time, but now we will never see the spacecraft again. We got the last views of the spacecraft when we launched. And the next time a spacecraft is being built at JPL, hopefully there will be a cam on it, a camera, and I just absolutely recommend that you watch it all the time. It's fascinating stuff. There were many a meeting where, like, the cranes coming in to pick up the spacecraft to move it across the high bay, and literally the entire science meeting just stops as we all stare off at our screens. We're like, no, can't watch, can't pay attention to this meeting. They're moving the spacecraft. It's on a crane. What if they drop it, right? It was wonderful. And then, of course, you have to ship the spacecraft to Kennedy. And for that, I'm going to let one of my colleagues tell you, because they made a great movie. He can tell you way better than me. And it should go. It should go. Okay, maybe I have to hit play. Let me.
Have you ever thought about how we take a spacecraft from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and move it to Florida to get launched? So what you're seeing here is what we call High Bay 1. The engineers, the technicians, the quality assurance members of our team are actually getting our spacecraft ready. The process for preparing the spacecraft is really an art form, a dance. One of the things that we have to think about is how we're going to make our spacecraft fit inside of our shipping container. We have to figure out what hardware needs to ship with the main spacecraft and what hardware needs to be taken off, like taking off the high gain antenna. One of the things we need to do is lift the spacecraft from its ground support equipment and move it into the shipping container.
Stop. Okay, perfect.
Our multi-mission container was specially designed to carry spacecraft across the country. That means that the temperature's controlled, the environment's controlled, how many particles that can be inside are controlled to make sure that our spacecraft stays clean and safe. The spacecraft has an amazing journey once we're in the shipping container.
Got him.
It goes from JPL on a big semi-truck It ends up at March Air Reserve Base. Once it arrives at March, we unload it and rapidly move it into a C-17 for a flight that will take it to Kennedy Space Center. So the spacecraft isn't the only thing that we actually pack up and ship across the country. There's all these things that we call ground support equipment, GSE, that need to go with us. Those help us manage the spacecraft.
We have 12 trucks of ground support equipment, and then we will have 2 trucks that support the spacecraft move itself, so a grand total of 14 trucks.
Emotionally, this is one of the scariest periods of time. It's the first time the spacecraft is going from a very, very, very controlled environment and going into more of an uncontrolled environment where other human beings are around. Behind the scenes is a lot of engineers that are planning out every step of this process. Lots of members of our assembly, test, and launch operations team actually uproot their families and move to Florida for 6 months. My emotions for Europa Clipper and the spacecraft leaving is bittersweet. I think it's going to feel like if my kids go off to college. When the spacecraft was here in Southern California, I could come over and visit anytime I wanted to. Now in Florida, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's more like getting a phone call every other week, but it's going to be exciting too because now our spacecraft is getting ready to do its final dance. It's getting ready to graduate and be on its way to do this science around Europa, this beautiful moon around Jupiter.
So you can see why I didn't even bother. Kobe is so amazing. Just showing that video, way better than me talking about it. So the spacecraft got there. I don't know. There was a very subtle little thing that probably went by there. So the spacecraft safely arrived like May 23rd. And just so you know, the week that we found out about the transistor problem, like the week of May 1st, like 2 weeks before we were getting ready to ship. That's a crazy time to find out about a problem like that, right? And of course, you ship anyway, because if it turns out that the problem is nothing, if you stopped shipment, you've missed your launch window. So you have to ship anyway. But also the team is focused on getting the vehicle ready to launch. And now there's this problem. So they take like 90% of the team and they say, you are firewalled off. You cannot pay attention to this huge problem because you have to continue doing your job and getting the spacecraft ready for launch. We're going to take 10% off of the team off, and we're going to work this crazy emergency. And then when they tell you that it's safe, literally they told us weeks before launch. So from May until September is how, and they just worked constantly to figure out if it was safe to fly the spacecraft. Truly extraordinary for people who've worked on multiple missions. This was not typical. This was an atypical challenge that Clipper faced. Another challenge that we had is that our solar arrays, first were intended to come to JPL and be integrated on the spacecraft at JPL, but because of delays, they had to go straight to the Cape. So when we actually got them at the Cape, they're gigantic, right? They have to have this entire white support structure around them if you want to deploy them and take a look and install the Reason antenna. You can see here's the Reason VHF assemblies right there, and the HF is buried behind. So really kind of an extraordinary level of integration was happening still at the Cape as well. I think this is a movie. Yes. I think it's just a movie. That's kind of like a recording. Yeah, that's okay. We're going on to the next one. Okay. I want you to go to the next one. So this is a couple of pictures of the spacecraft. You could see the solar arrays there, all tucked up. So that's all 5 of them folded together on each side of the spacecraft. And then there's the high gain antenna. And this is the fairing here. This thing right here, this is the fairing. And then this thing here is this thing here, right, on top of the spacecraft. So when they actually roll it out, they roll it out sideways and then they tip it up Very fun to watch that. We were all in our hotel rooms. So I want to spend a minute talking about the craziness of the last week, right? So what normally happens? What normally happens is we have a science team meeting, and all of the scientists come. We have one every couple of months. They're called Project Science Group meetings. We have them 3 times a year typically. Once we're out at tour, we'll be doing them 3 times a year, and in cruise, we only do them once. But we always try to plan one at launch, so the science team comes together at launch, and everybody can enjoy launch. So we've been working for months and months and months to pull off the science team meeting, but because of the MOSFETs and because of this and because of that thing, there was a lot of uncertainty. So we had multiple agendas, and by multiple I mean a handful, right? 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 agendas, right? Nothing like 50, right? Okay, so when we got there, there was a warning that there was some weather coming our way. There was a storm, and that there might be some rain and etc. And so, okay, whatever. The next day, they were like, well, it's growing in intensity. It's probably going to be a hurricane. Within the next 24 hours, it was a hurricane, and then within the next 24 hours, it was a Cat 5 hurricane. The Cat 5 hurricane was coming across Florida from the west, and the early path had it literally going over the pad where we were going to launch. So the path of the hurricane was going over our launch pad. The path of the hurricane was going over our launch pad, and it was targeted to be over the launch pad on October 10th at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Our initial launch window was October 10th at 12:31, like half an hour earlier. So clearly we're not going to roll out the spacecraft if it's about to be in the middle of a hurricane. So it stayed inside, safe and sound. But the whole science team is there. So that's a whole crazy thing. So like some of the science team just was like, okay, no, I'm not going to stay in the middle of a hurricane. I'm going to drive north to Georgia, whatever. Some people stayed. We were in a hotel, thanks to our amazing staff that was like, no, this hotel is rated. It's fine. So some people who were at Airbnbs, they came to the hotel. And so I don't know if you know this, but hurricanes spawn tornadoes. Did you know that? Raise your hand if you knew that hurricanes make tornadoes. Okay, smarty pants, did not know that. I did not know that, okay? So yeah, this was a record hurricane for making tornadoes. I'll tell you about the one tornado that we all had an intimate relationship with. It came in off of the ocean, over the swimming pool of the hotel, past the balcony where, now I'm not going to use a pejorative term, you can put in whatever language you want, where the scientist was taking a video on his balcony of the tornado. Okay, and of course, and you knew it was a he. I didn't even have to tell you, you knew it was a he. But yeah, and actually he has 2 videos. He has one video that's a little bit longer that ends with some expletives as he runs for the safety of the bathroom. And then the video he put on Facebook is a little bit shorter. So the tornado comes in over the swimming pool, down the side of our hotel, rips off the car roof of the car parking right at the edge of the parking lot, jumps the street and rips off the roof of the Wells Fargo. Power goes out in the hotel, like their backup power didn't work, just like catastrophic. Okay, there's like, you cannot stay here, scientist. You thought you could stay here, but you cannot stay here. So we all get up in the morning, and it was loud. I mean, it was loud as the hurricane and the tornadoes were just rolling right over the hotel. And then it's like, okay, decamp to a whole new hotel. So it's like, really? You found like another hotel that could take, okay. So like we all go over to this other hotel. And meanwhile, they're just canceling the meetings, right? Like agenda number 57, no, that one's gone. We're doing nothing on Tuesday. We're doing nothing on Wednesday. No, actually we did do things on Tuesday. We're doing nothing on Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday. But then they're like, okay, we're going to hold the meeting on Friday. And we're all like, really? Really? We're going to hold the meeting on Friday? And I'm like, okay, we're holding the meeting on Friday. So it's just, I just want to tell you, I've been to 100 PSGs. I will never have an experience like the experience I had for Clipper launch. It was an extraordinary moment. It's clearly the first hurricane I've been in. It's the closest tornado I've ever been next to. And the team, the team was fantastic, right? The people who needed to stay with the spacecraft inside the hangar, they took their cots in and stayed with the spacecraft inside the hangar. The rest of us hunkered down in safety, some inside the state, some outside the state. When like everybody said, okay, we're really going to do the meeting, we really did the meeting. Like we had our meeting. And we talked about the things one talks about at a meeting. And of course, we haven't launched yet. You know, launch is no earlier than Saturday. And then launch is like no earlier than Sunday. And then launch is no earlier than Monday. And they keep using this phrase, no earlier than. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Should we go? Should we go now? Or what are we going to do? So it turned out no earlier than Monday turned out to be Monday, the 14th. And if you don't know this, after a hurricane, the weather is beautiful. It's beautiful. Not a cloud in the sky, calm winds. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So I have another movie. This is one that our comms team put together about launch. Okay, and again, they could do it better than me. I told you my personal story of crazy hurricanes, tornadoes, and launch delays.
Live at NASA's Kennedy Space Center for NASA's Europa Clipper mission, a nearly 2 billion mile, 5.5-year journey to Jupiter's icy ocean moon.
And liftoff. Liftoff of Falcon Heavy with Europa Clipper, unveiling the mysteries of an enormous ocean lurking beneath the icy crust of Jupiter's moon, Europa.
Booster separation confirmed.
Fairing is separated, and those will be recovered by SpaceX's own recovery ship, Go Cosmos.
This is a big moment for the program, for NASA, APL, and JPL. Let's watch.
Europa Clipper separation confirmed.
And there you go. NASA's Europa Clipper probe, embarking on a long-awaited mission to study Jupiter's icy moon, Europa. And what a sight.
Now they wait for acquisition of signal.
My shirt, I'm in the launch shirt.
And I believe we have it.
Right.
There it is.
Right, this is
Confirmation of signal from the spacecraft, Europa Clipper.
And then we learned today that our project manager has a favorite image of launch, and that this is his favorite image from launch. So launch was incredible. I do want to end with a couple of other things that make our mission special, and in particular, it was our Message in a Bottle campaign. We knew that we were sending this mission to another ocean world. And so typically, when NASA partners with museums around the nation, they usually partner with a natural history museum or something like Griffith that has a strong tradition in planetary science or geology, natural history. But because we were an ocean world, we're an ocean mission, from an ocean world going to an ocean world, we decided to partner with aquariums. And so we had a huge effort to go around and create sort of a roving display. We went to 5 aquariums in particular and had a big all-day, 2-day whoop-de-doo. It was awesome. And then another thing that we did is we reached out to the U.S. Poet Laureate and invited her to come to JPL to learn about the mission, to learn about what we were going to do, and we asked her to compose. A poem that would be inscribed on the side of the spacecraft. And there's always festooning, right? There's always things that we put on the side of spacecraft. But this is the first time that we had commissioned a poem from the U.S. Poet Laureate. She wrote a beautiful poem. I have a video here. It takes about a minute or two to read it. And I'm gonna
In praise of mystery, a poem for Europa. Arching under the night sky, inky with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing its call in the bough of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water. Each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark.
But when you ask the U.S. Poet Laureate to write you a poem, you get a pretty amazing poem. She hand wrote the poem out. It took her 17 tries before it was perfect. And then we took her handwriting, we inscribed it on the side of a plate. Also on that plate, now I have a movie, I don't want to play the movie, hopefully it won't start. Also on that plate, we had people say the word water in just 100 different languages. And we inscribed sort of the audio signal of that on there. We also have some other sort of call out to people who are important to the mission. One of the scientists who was our early supporter of the mission, Ron Greeley, and some other things, about water. Some things about water and the Drake equation, that sort of thing. I have a movie here. If you want to see more about putting together the plate, I can go ahead and do that. But I think I'm going to go on. Nope. I'm going to go on and make sure a few post-launch updates. Oh, you know what? I already told you the post-launch updates. We've deployed the ECM and we've deployed the Reason Boom. Okay, so I'm going to put up some resources and take some questions. And if you want me to go back and do the thing about me in the high bay or go back and do the plate, happy to do that. But with that, why don't we go ahead and bring up the lights? And I will take questions from the audience. I don't know how we get questions from people online. Do you know, Tim?
Yes.
Okay.
Spencer takes care of that.
Spencer takes care of that. All right, anybody in the audience have a question? Please wait for the mic to come to you. Oh, way at the top, Tim. I see 5 hands pop up. Dun, dun, dun. And I've got 2 slides here. Here are some resources, and then also here are some resources. QR code.
Okay, who over here? Raise your hand.
Okay. Hi.
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 That was an awesome talk.
Oh, thank you.
I have 2 questions
Sure.
for you. When the spacecraft comes back to Earth after its gravity assist from Mars, will you be doing any further looks at the craft before it heads to Jupiter? And once the mission's done, what happens with the spacecraft?
Okay, so it will be very hard to see the spacecraft. We will have telescopes that look, but what you're basically going to see is just a few pixels, right? So we don't have enough resolution to see did the antennas deploy or stuff like that. But we will do things. We will not do much because it's an Earth flyby. And a lot of the instruments have not had their covers deployed and things like that. They're waiting until they get out into the colder temperatures before they deploy their covers. So for example, the camera is not going to take any pictures of Mars nor the Earth because the covers are not deployed. What are we going to do with the spacecraft at the end is a conversation that we have with planetary protection. So one thing is you can't do a whole bunch of things, right? You can't crash it into Europa because what if there's life on Europa, right? That kind of stuff. So you can crash it into some of the other moons. Ganymede is acceptable. And so that is our current plan, is to crash into Ganymede. The reason we pick a moon versus Jupiter is because it's kind of easy to get to a moon. The moon, the moons are orbiting, so they're pretty far out. So you just kind of have to get your trajectory. And we do flybys anyway. You just have to tweak it a little to crash into the moon. It's pretty hard to get actually to Jupiter. You'd have to crank the orbits up really high, and then you'd have to plunge in. It can be done, and we might actually end up being there. But right now, the current plan is to crash into Ganymede, 2030, late 2034, early 2035. But that, of course, that assumes that we don't get an extended mission. So somewhere around EC1 is probably a year. Just give me a second. So like 2034. Sometime around like 2032-ish, we will go to headquarters and say, hey, the asset is awesome. We have new questions. Don't you want to fund us to answer those new questions? We have this amazing asset right there. And usually we go through a process and get an extended mission. But we have to be alert to the fact that we are going to be in a high radiation environment. And that is very harsh on all of our equipment. Now, right now, everything is like, yep, the equipment will make it through primary mission. But, you know, how much more on top of primary mission is, that's a conversation we have with headquarters. So sometime around 2032 or so, if the asset is healthy, we will be asking for an extended mission.
Who's next over here?
I think, yeah, the one right next to you.
Fabulous talk. It sounds like you had an experience very close to actually being an astronaut almost with everything that went physically wrong there. With the dust detector, do you expect there to be any drag, meaningful drag on the spacecraft?
We do not. The spacecraft doesn't get like, you have to get a dense plume, and then you have to go through it low. We're not going to go through plumes low, right? We're going to go through plumes high. If there are plumes, if there are plumes, and if we change the trajectory in the extended mission to go through them, we would not expect there to be much drag. Now, you might be thinking, because we mentioned Titan earlier, that did happen with Titan. We got close enough to Titan that we had to take into account the atmospheric drag. But remember, Titan's atmosphere, right? Like, we all know here in this room, because we're all like astronomy crazy people, right? That there's like Venus, Titan, the Earth, and Mars, right? That's we let Mars be in the club because they get mad if you don't let them be in the club. But they're a little tiny atmosphere, right? Like, so the Titan atmosphere is tremendous, which is why they're sending a octocopter there as one of the next missions. Yeah.
2 questions, if I may.
Sure.
You mentioned the Drake equation. How
Yes.
do we fix it to not be terrestrial planet-centric?
Well, on another day, I might have a good answer for that. But I do not have a good answer for that today because this brain right now cannot process that question. Let me just think. Nope, this brain cannot process that question right now. That's an excellent question, and other people might be able to answer it, but not me today.
Well, then the second is actually on the ice geology. So we know there's plate tectonics of a sort on Europa. Is there any idea of how similar or how different they're going to be from silicate, tectonics?
So the answer is yes. And where we get our best, I shouldn't call it geology, iceology, is by studying places like Antarctica. So when you have the movement of ice shelves in Greenland or in Antarctica, stuff like that, right? Those ice experts, we actually invited them onto our team because we are going to an ice world where we need to have ice geologists. So in fact, the ice penetrating radar team, like literally half the team doesn't know dip about Europa. They're like, Europa, Shamopa, talk to me about the ice, right? Maybe not half the team, maybe a third of the team. But so yes, the answer is yes, and it is different. And our best scientists are ice scientists from Antarctica and Greenland. Next.
Thank you for an amazing presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
I have 2 questions too as well. The first question is, I saw the crisscrossing of the orbits. If you see like a plume or when you're doing the ground penetrating radar and you see maybe a volcanic vent under there, would you stop and focus on that section more and instead of just going crisscrossing and going through? Would you, if you see something really amazing, would you stop?
So that's an interesting question. And that is assume the scientists for the next 5.5 years until we're faced with the reality of that question. There will be part of the team that will say, yes, you change the trajectory to go after that new discovery right now. And there will be part of the team that says, you do not do that. We have worked for years to get a global global coverage of Europa, and we have a trajectory that gets us global coverage of the questions we need to ask. If you want to go after the nice, fuzzy, new, shiny thing, you do it in extended mission. But I can tell you right now that that will be a conversation that will consume scientists for 100 hours. And if I had to bet, I would bet on the no, finish the global mission first, then go after the shiny thing. But you know what? Scientists are a fickle bunch. They sometimes go in directions that are unanticipated by mere mortals. So if the whole science team says, hey, change the trajectory to go after that, that's so amazing. And if headquarters agrees, well, then we'll do it.
Thank you for that
Sure.
answer.
Did you have a second
And
question?
My second question is, how do you scientists and engineers know how high you're supposed to do the orbit when you're going around these moons, like Enceladus or Titan or Europa? And the second part of that question is, the instruments that you showed, all of them, do they have to have a certain height from the planet to work well, and combined with how high you're supposed to go so it doesn't go too low or too high and maybe radiation mess with it and all kind of stuff? So thank you.
Question from my heart. Oh my God, I love this question so much. Okay, so I love this question so much because I worked on Cassini for years, and Cassini was consumed with how high, how low, all that kind of stuff. This is an awesome question. The answer to your question is yes, 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 yes. Okay, so first of all, how do you figure it out? Literally, there are people who are experts in like the gravity that a moon pulls on a spacecraft. And they have the most sophisticated pieces of software. And they string these things together, and they give us a tour. And it's incredible. Like the first tour they gave us in 2015, having been on Cassini, I was like, oh my God, that tour is amazing. But then all the scientists said, that tour is very good, but this is what would make it better, right? And then these tour designers go off, and they're, like in a basement, right? Working. And then they give you the next tours. And in 2017, we had even better tours. And I was like, oh my God, those tours are amazing. Then the scientist said, here's what you could do to make it better. Not every instrument can operate at every altitude. Some instruments really need to be low, like the dust detector and the mass spectrometer. Some instruments need to be like right at 50. That's not too high, not too low. It's like perfect, right? And that's like reason and the cameras. Some instruments would rather be a little bit higher because they don't want to be in all the muck, right? They want to have the bigger view. So the tour designers are like, okay, let me kind of do a little of this, a little of that, some of this, maybe we'll go back to that. Then they come out with their 2019 trajectory, and it was even better. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that the trajectory could get better. Then we had the 2021, and at that point I just gave up. I'm like, these guys are phenomenal. They're phenomenal, okay? They made a tour that is so beautiful, it would make you weep. It is so gorgeous, and it has so much opportunity. It's going to be amazing. And by the way, this is why the answer to the previous question is no. We're not going to change the tour for your shiny little plume. We're just not. But, scientists are fickle.
Was there anyone else up top here? Okay, go ahead, Spencer.
All right, so the first one is from Dave. Interesting, why not orbit Europa directly?
Okay. So the reason we don't orbit Europa directly is because of the radiation. Europa is embedded deep in Jupiter's magnetic field. And so there's a high radiation environment, and there's also the Jupiter's magnetic field picks up charged particles and slams it into the spacecraft constantly. So it's a very dangerous environment. So what you do is you come into Jupiter, and you speed up, and you fly by Europa really fast. Then you get out of that dangerous environment, and then you spend 2 weeks playing back the data, but it's 2 weeks where you're not in the high radiation environment. And so instead of lasting 30, 60, or 90 days, you last 4 years and you get 50 flybys. It's just a different way to do it, but it's quite clever. Okay. And I am for it.
All right, another question is from Aram. I was curious about the route the spacecraft took. I'm wondering if it was possible to take a more roundabout route to save money on fuel or add another science instrument.
Sorry, what was the last bit of that? A more roundabout way to...
To save money on fuel or add another science instrument.
Okay, so let me take that slightly differently. So when you propose a mission, you propose with a launch vehicle. We proposed with the SLS. The SLS was going to take us direct from the Earth to Jupiter in 2.5 years. No surprise, SLS has been delayed. So then we're like, okay, what are we going to do? So we went out and we put out a proposal, request for proposal. Hey, everybody who launches stuff, can any of you launch us? And everybody came back and said, nope, you're too hard to launch. We don't have the thrust that you need. But SpaceX said, well, maybe if we don't bring the boosters back and we add the this and we do the that, with the heavies, maybe. So we like, okay, let's start working with SpaceX to see if they can launch us, but we'll still keep our SLS as the main launch plan. But then SLS got delayed again. By that time, we went back to SpaceX and we said, okay, with the heavy option and don't return the boosters, all this kind of stuff, do you guys think you could do it? And they're like, yeah, we think we can do it. So then you officially change your launch vehicle. Now, when you do that, sometimes it changes the opportunities. Like, do you still have a direct to Jupiter? Or also, do you have the thrust to get you direct to Jupiter? It turns out that they didn't have the thrust to get us direct to Jupiter, but they could put us on one of these interplanetary trajectories, where we go to Mars, we go to Earth, and then we go out to Jupiter. So really, the way that you get there is a dance in partnership with your launch vehicle. And then and your final question was, did we trade like an instrument for that? We didn't trade an instrument, but now that we're orbiting for 5 years before we ever get to science at target, the mission is much more expensive. So headquarters says things like, okay, Clipper's pretty expensive now. It's so expensive that we're going to have to delay one of the smaller missions. So there was a mission that was going to go to Venus called Veritas. There was more to it than just Clipper. But so other missions possibly get delayed. Rarely is it that you lose an instrument on your mission in this dance. It's usually the cost and overall portfolio of the planetary science community that's controlled at NASA headquarters. Another one online?
Yeah, another one. Where's the high gain antenna?
Where's the high gain antenna? The high gain antenna, it's right here. Oh, you're not, oh, wait, you're not, wait, can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a sec. I don't see my, this is the high gain antenna right here.
Okay.
Now remember, this is the configuration for flying by Europa, okay? This is not the configuration where we're pointed at Earth. Imagine tipping the whole thing up so that the high gain antenna is pointed at the Earth, and then rotating the solar rays. So if we tip the whole thing up, the solar rays would be on edge. So then rotate the solar rays 90 degrees. That's called power config. High gain antenna at the Earth, solar rays at the sun. So we're going to rotate those solar rays every time we do a flyby.
All right.
So there's a solar array articulation device that's going to go 1,000 billion times. And we're not worried about that piece of equipment at all. Not a bit. We're confident that that piece of equipment is going to be great. Really, we're confident. Next question.
So this one is from Laura May. I'd like to ask, what are some of the science ideas, theories you or the team are hoping to prove through this mission?
So really, we're going to go after those things that I told you about in the beginning. We're going to try to understand the interior. How thick is the ice shell and how deep is the ocean and how salty is the ocean? We're going to try to understand that red stuff in detail. We know that it's heavy in salts, but we want to know if there's more sophisticated Oh, Tim, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right.
All right, Tim. That was... Okay, we're all watching Tim now. We can't look away.
I'm still alive.
Okay, and then there's the ice geology. There's the cameras and the this and the that. You're right, because we want to understand that. And then ultimately the habitability. So those are really what we're going after. Your question is, what were the big science? Those are the big science things. Okay, composition, interior, geology, and then ultimately habitability.
Okay,
yes, Gio.
Laura May,
go
ahead.
Yeah, no, if there's a follow-up.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to say, like, what are some I was reading about, for example, the all those theories back and forth on the Epsom salts, kind of, or sulfuric, origin of those stripes. I'm just curious what you personally, what is one specific, maybe a little favorite theory or idea that you might hope might get proven by this mission?
So if I were to pick one thing that I think is going to be amazing and that I personally am looking forward to is understanding the chaos terrain, in particular the ice penetrating radar telling us really what's going on. We can only see the top and it looks like a whole bunch of jumbled things that have been mixed up. I'd really like to understand the details of that. Like, was it a sheet that got broken up and tipped? Is it something completely unexpected? I think it's a sheet that's got broken up and tipped, and it's like going to be a puzzle to put it together. And right now it's a 2D puzzle, and after that it'll be a 3D puzzle, and I'm looking forward to that. That would be my really understanding the chaos terrain would be like front page of the New York Times. Is what I think.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, Gio.
All right, so the thickness, people are saying some areas might be a mile, 2 miles, some areas might be 8 miles.
Yeah.
Is there a particular limit that your radar will be able to, let's say, after 20 miles, it can't go any further down?
So it's not as simple as just depth. It has to do with what kind of ice. So I'll tell you kind of the extremes. If the ice is cold and clear with very few cracks, sky's the limit. You can go as far as you want, okay? If there's jumbled at the top, it'll be a little bit harder. And if there's cracks everywhere, little puddles of water in the middle, it's very challenging, right? We hit a puddle of water, that's the end, right? It can't go beneath the puddle of water. The radar instrument is an ice penetrating radar, but it's water absorber radar. That's just the way that radars are. And a fun story, so that you will always remember this, is back in World War II when they first started to have radars on planes. Like, people were crashing into Greenland all the time and dying. I know, sad. We're sad people were dying. But then, like, somebody lived. And when he got back, he's like, dude, the ice penetrating radar, the radar told me I was like miles above the surface, right? Well, it's true. He was miles above the ground. He just wasn't miles above the miles of ice on top of the ground. And then everybody's like, oh, radar penetrates ice. Lesson learned. So now you will all remember that as well, too. Did you have another question, Gio?
Well, I'll let the other people go first.
Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Was there one more question?
You're one of your new people.
Oh,
and don't
our new
fall,
member.
Tim.
Our new member has a question. We must serve our new members.
Following along on that same thing, what is the energy source in that radar? Is it microwaves? I mean, what is bouncing in and out of that planet?
Yeah, so the energy source is the spacecraft itself. So we have the power of the solar rays, charge a battery. The batteries, when reason turns on, it pulls that power into its digital system. It powers it up and it sends the power out those very, very long antennas. So all the other instruments use, for example, the cameras, the sunlight bounces off of Europa and into the camera, right? That's how it gets photons to the eyes of the camera. Reason is the only one that brings their own photons. Once they're radiating out of all 8 of those assemblies. And it's just like the way that a radar antenna radiates on a plane or on top of your roof.
So radio frequency.
Yes, it's 60 megahertz and 9 megahertz.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, there's a big, going back to your question, Gio, like this is one of those times when the science community is like, there's like 2 camps, right? There's the thin shell camp and the thick shell camp. And finally where they kind of landed is, well, sometimes it'll be thin and sometimes it'll be thick. But actually, this is going to be one of the great contributions of this mission is the fact that we have this ice penetrating radar, and we're going to be able to fill that out because it's very complicated, right? The chaos terrain, hopefully very thin, but there are other places that will be very thick, and then is it cold, is it cracked, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be awesome. I think the big discovery, I think the big thing this goes back to the question that the young lady had. Like, what do I personally think? I personally think that the thing that's going to blow people's socks off is going to be the ice penetrating radar, because we've taken cameras to the Jupiter system before. We've taken magnetometers, right? So yeah, these are better, way better. These are way better, right? But the delta, right? The delta from what we know now, like what we know now from the about ice penetrating, we know next to nothing. And what we're going to learn, I think, could be revolutionary. Okay, with that, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Trina.
Absolutely. All right, I see people with raffles coming up. I will step aside for the raffle.
It's time for us to transition to door prizes.
Okay, for those of you on Zoom, I'm reposting the Zoom link. The link for the raffle for the drawing.
Yeah. Did everybody in the room get a door prize ticket? If there's somebody who didn't, speak now or forever hold your peace. Did our guest speaker get a door prize ticket?
Yes,
Oh,
the
boy.
speaker got a door prize ticket. Oh, I have my mic on. How about if I take that off so that you don't hear me mumbling to myself? Although my mumbling might be interesting.
Yeah.
Dave, somebody's yelling your name. Okay, I'm going to turn this off.
Okay, I'm going to close out the link for the Zoom folks in another 30 seconds. So if you haven't filled out the door prize form, do so now.
Looks like everybody inside has a ticket.
And I'm closing out the link for the Zoom folks now.
Oh boy, our speaker brought some trifolds and stickers. Sorry about you people on Zoom. You're not here to pick up a trifold or a sticker. Yeah, we'll take him to Garvey. It'll force you guys to come now. Okay, so the in people here in the auditorium, we're going to give away 2 lasers, constellation glasses, and a Celestron Skymaster 15x70 binoculars. For those of you who are on Zoom, we will be giving away an LAAS online store item, a map of the moon, an eclipse book, and a hot and cold Keurig. So we will start indoors while Spencer gets the Zoomy people ready, and we're going to give away a couple of green lasers. So the first 2 people get green lasers.
Also have an announcement. This coming Friday, Pierce College, Dr. Fields is here, is giving a wonderful planetarium show from 5 to 7. It's free. There's no charge. It's in Woodland Hills, right off of Victory and near DeSoto. Right? Okay. Here we go. First number is, everybody should have 833-5093. There you go. Come on down, bring your ticket, please. Oh, wait, I have him up there. He's got it. He's got one right there. There we go. Okay, next one is a laser. Green laser. Is 8335089. There you go. We have a winner. Evan will bring it right over there to you. Thank you, Evan. Yeah, right. Helicopters and planes, stay away. Don't get our club in trouble. Thank you. That's all we need to be on the news. Los Angeles Astronomical Society. Great. That's all we need. Okay, Spencer, go ahead.
Okay, first one is Jose Aguilar.
Jose Aguilar
He won an online LAAS store item. Congratulations.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Want me to
Next.
do a second one? Okay.
Okay.
Hang on a second. Let's see. It's Andy and Veronica Jones.
They won a map of the moon.
Okay.
Congratulations. Okay, two more here. Spencer, here we go. Uh, 8335076. 076? You have that? Joe Phipps. What did he win? A set of constellation glasses. Congratulations. Okay, and our last one. Celestron Skymaster 15 by 70 binoculars. Celestrons. Here we go. Is 8335073. Did you get? Oh, our speaker. Woo!
All right, there you go.
We've got a winner.
Well, okay, you should check that because I don't have my glasses.
That is correct. No, it is right. Congratulations. And we'll know how to get a hold of you. Okay.
Yeah, I know how to find her.
Yeah. Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
They're really cool.
Two more online.
Two more online. Go ahead, Spencer.
Okay. Norm.
Here's the. I'm giving it back to you.
Norm Thorne.
Who was that?
Norm Thorne.
Norm Thorne won an Eclipse book.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Okay. All right, and let's see. And Tom Hendricks.
Tom Hendricks won a hot and cold Keurig.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Look forward to getting it.
Now, I didn't record the first two names for the online winners, but you have those, Spencer?
I got the first one. I didn't get the second one.
Yeah, Andy and
That's
Veronica.
Oh yeah, Andy and
Thomas
Veronica. Right,
Hendricks.
got it.
I'm
Okay, got it.
speaking
Yeah.
For myself.
Okay.
And who was the first one?
Jose Aguilar.
Jose, okay.
Okay.
So now we know who won what.
Okay.
And with that, the meeting is officially over. Thank you. Good night, all. We've avoided catastrophe once again.
Thank you. Good night from Thomas Hendricks.
Good night.
For drawing my name there. Thank you. Bye-bye.
For those of you on Zoom, I'm going to leave the session open for a little while longer if you guys want to just socialize and chat. So I'll leave it open for about another half hour or so if you want. But I'm stopping the live stream now.